Welcome back, and joining me now, as promised, is Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. Governor Shapiro, you announced today, as I said earlier on the show, you're running for re-election. You put out a great video where you talked about getting stuff done. I'll call it. Use another word, which you can certainly use.
Yep.
Stuff. And we're going to talk about that, and we want to dive into it and all the things you may be planning, which a lot of people out there are wondering. But I just want to start with the horrifying news out of Minneapolis, where, of course, an ICE agent killed a 37-year-old woman. And we just learned tonight, and I should note for viewers, we've been watching the press conference. There's not really, we will keep you updated on anything new that happens. There's not a lot of details we know, but there were 2 people shot in Portland, Oregon as well. Point is, this could happen in really any city. I know you think about it. What's your reaction to the news over the last 2 days?
Well, Jen, I'm glad we're starting here because this is an unbelievably important issue, and this is a scary time. I know a lot of people are very fearful. I think the first thing I would just say is this is not how you keep a community safe. The way you keep a community safe is, by the way, what I just talked about in my address to the people here in Pennsylvania. You hire law enforcement, you invest in the community, you find ways to bring them together, and you foster trust. By the president sending masked people unannounced into communities, not at the urging or invitation of a governor or of a mayor, creates chaos and wreaks havoc on a community. And we saw a tragedy fall upon Minnesota. And I mourn for the loss of life and the children she left behind and the spouse she left behind. I think I'd say this as not just a governor, but as a former attorney general, the former chief law enforcement officer of this Commonwealth. What is needed now is a full and thorough and complete investigation. I've been part of those investigations. And unfortunately, what we're seeing are the federal authorities seemingly not cooperating with local and state authorities in Minnesota. And that makes it incredibly dangerous and incredibly difficult to get at the truth of what occurred here. I know I've been involved in these investigations, and it's important that local, state, and federal law enforcement work together. And then to have J.D. Vance and Kristi Noem, 2 people who, by the way, are wholly unqualified for the positions that they hold, go in and throw gasoline on the fire, go in and gaslight a community, and go in and make clear that they are not going to cooperate in an investigation, further erodes the kind of trust that we build in communities here in Pennsylvania. So I'm just devastated by the loss of life. I'm concerned about the fear that not just people in Minnesota, but I think all Americans feel, many Americans feel, as they watch these horrifying images out of some cities across America. And we need to do better. And I'd really urge the president to get serious about law enforcement, to get serious about keeping people safe, and to cut this out, because what the president of the United States and his enablers are doing are making people less safe.
One of the things that I think scares people, and I bet you will hear, or you probably already have heard from people about this, is when you hear the Vice President of the United States go out to the White House briefing room, which, as I noted earlier, means it was on his schedule. He planned to do this. He's essentially defaming a woman who died yesterday. And he also says that this ICE officer has absolute immunity. As you mentioned, I mean, were on the forefront as Attorney General of fighting illegality, including by this Trump administration. Does he have absolute immunity? What do you make of that claim?
No, of course not. Look, Jen, I have had to deal with incredibly difficult investigations where there's been a loss of life at the hand of a law enforcement official. And, Jen, we take these investigations so seriously, and we work with law enforcement at every level. We study the evidence. We follow where it leads. And in some cases, we prosecute police for doing something wrong. And in other cases, no matter how difficult it is for a community, when you follow the rule of law, when you follow the facts, you don't prosecute them. But the fact remains, you have to have a thorough investigation. And by J.D. Vance saying what he said, denying that investigation, literally making up nonsense, what he's doing is he's creating more chaos in our communities. And I think he's come to define what this administration is all about: chaos, cruelty, and corruption. And I think J.D. Vance summed it up yet again today from the White House briefing room.
There's no question, as you continue to campaign for your election here and you continue to govern, you could be navigating what a lot of people in these other cities and states are navigating. And we saw just yesterday, Governor Walz asked ICE to leave Minnesota alone. The mayor of Portland is calling for a halt on ICE operations in his city. This could happen to Pennsylvania, as you well know. Have you thought, or have you made any plans to change how you're directing state agencies to interact with ICE?
Not only have we thought, not only have we planned, we've gone through tabletop exercises. We've worked with law enforcement at every level to be prepared. We don't want law enforcement that is sent here without a coordinated effort into our communities. We want more law enforcement in our communities in a coordinated way, coordinated between law enforcement at every level and coordinated with our communities, working in partnership. Jen, here in Pennsylvania, I made a commitment to hire 2,000 more law enforcement officers. We're at about 1,900. We're going to eclipse that 2,000 figure. And we work with our community organizations. And Jen, violent crime is down 12%. Gun violence is down 42%. What we're doing here is working. We don't want the Trump administration, the Trump-Vance administration, to be sending people here against the will of a community. That injects chaos, and it erodes the trust that we have worked so hard to build.
It sounds like, I know you're referring to your local law enforcement and all the incredible work they do, and certainly ICE is not reducing crime. That is not what they're doing, actually, in a lot of communities. Are you telling law enforcement to reduce their cooperation, to give them less information, not to give them information they request? Or is there anything you're changing, given what we've seen over the last couple of days?
We follow state law, but we work with law enforcement at every level to keep communities safe. What we don't want is the injection of people in our communities who are going to make our neighborhoods less safe. I think what we're doing here in Pennsylvania is working. And we work with our federal partners. We engage with them, and we work with them in a way where we can build trust with them and they can build trust with the community. That's what we need more of. What we're seeing in other communities erodes that trust and injects a level of chaos in our communities that, as we're sadly seeing, is quite dangerous.
You've done a lot in your first term as governor. I appreciate it, as somebody who grew up driving on I-95, that you talked about fixing I-95, something a lot of people care about, honestly. A lot of people care about. It's possible that, you're working with a divided legislature, but there are a lot of elections that could come up. There could be more congressional seats won, state legislature, you could win back more. What would you do if you won the trifecta? What would you love to accomplish in a next term as governor?
Well, we've gotten a whole lot of stuff done, even with the divided legislature. We've invested historic amounts in public education, universal free breakfast. We talked before about the investments we've made in law enforcement. Our economy is growing. In fact, we've got the only growing economy in the northeastern part of the United States. We've cut taxes 7 times to put money back in people's pockets. And so we're finding ways to work together, Democrat and Republican alike. But to the heart of your question, Pennsylvania, once again, will be the center of the political universe in these midterms. That's why I am laser focused on these midterms, not just for my race and my great Lieutenant Governor, Austin Davis, but the balance of power in the U.S. House of Representatives is likely going to come down to these 4 seats in Pennsylvania. My entire state legislature is divided by only 3 seats, 2 in the Senate, 1 in the House. We get a trifecta, we're going to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. We're going to address gun violence even more head on. We're going to pass protections for victims of abuse and our LGBTQ brothers and sisters. We're going to continue to reduce costs. We're going to invest in building more housing and allowing people to get an affordable roof over their head and a whole lot more. I got a lot more work to do here, Jen, and I'll work with anyone, Democrat or Republican, but I'm going to be working real hard in these midterms to win these Democratic seats and do what we need to do to be able to govern effectively.
Governor Shapiro, I know you have a book coming out, something people never do if they're considering running for president, which I won't ask you about because I know you're not going to answer me, but I hope you'll come back and talk about that. And also talk about, I appreciate how much you talk about rising political violence. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jen.